So it can at times increase first at an increasing rate and then at a decreasing rate. It depends on the response of output to input. And those responses, you can describe them through constant return to scale, where you can have increasing return to scale, and you can also have decreasing return to scale. So for this product, for this concept, apart from total products, we have average product that tries to describe per unit input. Per unit input. This is expressed as output per unit input. So what the average product is simply pointing to is, what do you have per unit product? So average product, oftentimes you still refer to it as per unit product, and you get that by, you see here, the formula is simply given as your total product divided by the quantity of input, divided by the quantity of input. So if you put in 10 inputs, you divide your total product by those 10 inputs that you put, you will have your per unit. So for the last concept, marginal product, this is addition to total products as a result of using extra units of input. So anything marginal may not crop up if there is no need to make additional production. So you need to be familiar with these three major concepts. So I think subsequently, there is a table here that we will use to explain it further. So let's quickly see what we mean by the law of diminishing returns. Law of diminishing returns. Now, I will want to use this law of, before I explain this law of diminishing returns, I want us to quickly check when we say short run, when we mention short run and long run. Oh God, why is this network fluctuating? That's locked me out again. So, all right. So before we look at the law of diminishing return, we simply need to quickly note the difference between short run and the long run. When we say a particular production process is in the short run, oftentimes it's not by time horizon, maybe like a year or months or whatever, but it's simply defined. It is simply defined by how, to what extent are you manipulating or adjusting the inputs that you are using. So for instance, by the nature of some factor inputs cannot change within a particular time horizon. So anytime we have factor inputs that are fixed, then we are saying that such production process is in the short run. In as much as we have a particular factor input that is fixed in a particular time horizon, then such production process in that time is a short run production. In the absence of any fixed factor input, then we are referring to long run production process. So what that simply means is that the difference between short run and long run production process is by the nature of the factor input. If you take a particular factor input, for instance, labor, if you can hire 10, 20 or more than that labor, in as much as you don't have a fixed number of labor that you are using at that point in time, then that is the long run. So anytime we have flexible factor inputs or variable factor inputs, then we are talking about the long run. But once you have any of those factor inputs that is not varied, then that is definitely referring to the short run. So I want you to quickly note this question down now. Differentiate between short run and long run production process. Differentiate between short run and long run production process. So I hope we have gotten the question. Differentiate between short run and long run production process. So like I've already said, you may not be able to explain this law of diminishing return or law of variable proportion. You will still note the difference anyway, without noting what we mean by short-run production and long-run production process. So this question that I just told you to put down, we should be able to indicate what is the difference between the long-run and the short-run production process. Idera?
Maya, I've answered the question. No worry. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, so you can mute yourself now. So let's continue. Now, when we're going beyond the short run and long run, any firm, any organization, you could have 20, 30 years in production process, and yet that 20 or 30 years may not actually qualify as long run. The reason is because by nature of some production, by nature of some factor inputs, like for instance, the building, the factory, they could still remain the same. You could not expand production, and there are some capitals or some equipment that by their nature, they are fixed capital. So if you have such in an organization or if a particular firm or company, definitely they are still operating in the short run, in as much as they have a particular factor input that is still fixed. So when you are trying to differentiate between the law of diminishing return or the law of variable proportion, law of diminishing return does not prop up if there is no fixed factor input. So let me repeat what I just said. If you have been hearing about the law of diminishing return, it doesn't crop up until you have been using a particular factor input that is fixed, that is not changing, that is not varying, and you are adding every other factor input that are changing to a particular one. So a typical example is you have a factory space that you have been using in your production process, and you keep bringing in 10 labor, 10 workers, 20 workers. It's still you keep increasing some other things that you are using within the factory space, while the factory space remains, expansion in the space, but you are very, so the law of diminishing return crops up whenever there is incompatible combination of factor inputs in a production process. So it explains that as more of particular factor is added to other factors that are not changing. So I've given an example. Other factors that may not be changing could be your factory space, and it remains in that form for a very long time. And yet you are bringing in equipment, you are bringing in workers, you are bringing in more raw materials, and yet you are using a particular factor input that remains unchanged. So in as much as you are, so for a typical law of diminishing returns, it doesn't crop up if every factor inputs are variable, but it crops up only when one or two factor inputs are. So if I ask now, before what I have on the screen, if I ask now, what is the difference between when you hear the law of diminishing return and you hear the law of variable proportion? Can anyone try to tell us the difference between the two? If you have heard it before, variable proportion, diminishing return, what is the difference? All right, Prince Ekwaba.
The difference between the law of diminishing returns and the law of variable proportions is that diminishing returns, if I understand well, applies in the short run, while variable proportions applies in the long run.
All right, thank you for that attempt. That is noted. Any other person? Is there any other person that wants to tell us the difference? All right. Diminishing return. Okay, Oluwa Nifemi. Is Oluwa Nifemi talking? All right.
Sorry, ma. I wanted to tell you that some people said they can't see anything on the YouTube link. They
Oh,
can't
sorry.
see.
Let me see whether it has not asked me to. It didn't give me the option of adding them. Let me see. They should use the link, the YouTube
They said,
link. All this network frustration is what keeps. Let
okay,
me
ma.
see.
I'll get the name, ma.
If the sign I have here is that it is going to the YouTube. I have option. It shows me here that it's connected to the YouTube. It's being sent to the YouTube, so they should check their network at their end here. Thank you. Then Mary, Mary, I share.
Good morning, ma. I wanted to
Any
get
difference?
the
You can see my screen. So I believe some of you that are responding, you've already know what to answer.
yeah. So the
Yeah?
difference between the law of diminishing return and
Mary,
law of
I share.
yes, ma'am, talking. I said the difference is the fact that the law
Yeah.
of diminishing return focuses on the point where marginal output starts decreasing. So it focuses on that time frame. But then the law of variable proportion covers all three stages of production, from increasing, diminishing, and negative returns. Then the other thing is the application period. The law of diminishing returns is in the short run, where at least one input is fixed. But the law of variable proportion states that it is also in the short run, but here one or more inputs are variable while others remain fixed. It doesn't restrict it to at least one being at least one input being fixed. It states that one or more inputs are variable while
Is
others
that
remain.
Ashia speaking? Is that Ashia?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So no, the others that were raising up their hands, I hope they don't have anything different from what we have had. Ekwaba said it's one is in the short run while the other one is in the long run. Ashia said as long as we have one fixed and all others. Now I want to believe that the response is in line with what I already show in my screen, and you can all read it out. So I would just want one of two of you to read out what we have on the screen to be sure that we are together. So I can call on anyone. Let me see. Apart from those that were raising up their hands, let me see who I can call. Just read out what you have on the screen so that we'll be sure you. Who is Adesola Samuel? Adesola Samuel, if you're on, please unmute yourself. Let me unmute you and then you can. I just want to be sure some of us are here. So who is John Koinsola? Oyinkosola, sorry. Oyinkosola. John Oyinkosola.
Yes, ma'am.
John Oyinkosola.
Yes, ma'am.
I called someone before you. I called Adesola Samuel. The person didn't respond. Okay, you've responded. Thank you. Law of diminishing returns. Can you see my screen? So can you please read out what we have on the screen? I've asked you to unmute, so you are talking now. John Oyinkosola. That means she's not seeing my screen. So Adesola Samuel, I'm going back to Adesola Samuel.
Good morning, ma'am.
Is that Samuel?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it Adeshola?
Adeshola, yes, ma'am. Adeshola.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, I can see it.
Please help us to read out everything you see there.
The law of diminishing return crops up whenever there is an incompatible combination of factors. Incompatible combination of factors input in a production process. It explains that as more of applicable with
as more of a particular factor.
Okay.
Sorry, let me separate that. That joined it together. It is as more of a particular factor. Yeah.
Okay. It explains that as more of a particular factor is added to another factor that are not changing, the total production progressively makes less returns. The law is otherwise referred to as the law of variable proportions, and it holds as long as either one of the factors is fixed while the others vary, or one factor is varied while the others are fixed. For the law to hold, there are assumptions that the unit of each factor's input in the same and that the technique of production adopted is the same. For an instance, assuming a factory employs workers in a production process, if it continues to hire more workers while the other factors of production remain constant, a point will be reached where an additional worker will provide less output than the previous ones. At such point, each additional worker will eventually decrease.
At such
points, each additional worker will eventually decrease the efficiency of other workers, thereby decreasing the total productivity of the factory.
All right, so I have a table here as example. Well, thank you, Samuel, Adeshola.
Yes,
Adeshola,
my
thank you.
pleasure.
You can mute yourself
My
now.
pleasure. Okay, ma'am.
So this table, I just use this table here to illustrate some of the other concepts I would love us to be familiar with, like I mentioned earlier, when we say total product, average, and marginal. So a typical example of when we say fixed factor is the land, where you have the same space all through. But variable factor, a typical example is the labor, or otherwise referred to as workers, that is changing, increasing by 1 in this table. Now, if there could be examples, or for instance, in your exam, there could be questions that may not include a fixed factor, and it will just maybe avoid, but you should not rule out the fact that there could be instances where we have just a fixed factor there, and why the variable factors are changing. And the variable factor that are changing may not even be changing or increasing or decreasing by 1. This example says from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, 5, 6, 7. But in another instance, it could change by any number that is not 1. But what we have here, you have total products as given, but a point will be reached. It's just like when a typical theory of consumer behavior, where you try to identify when you are at satiety point. So this thing that I just asked Samuel to read out explain the fact that it could be increasing, total product could be increasing, but a certain point will be reached where any additional to the worker, from worker 5 to worker 6, you see that total product did not change. And from worker 6 to worker 7, you see that rather than increasing the total product reduced to 55. Now, for the subsequent concept, we have average product. That formula that I gave earlier, you have total product divided by the input, quantity of input. And this time around, the quantity of input, apart from the fixed one, the quantity of input is simply the labor or the worker. So by total product is 10, you divide it by 1. Total product increased to 25, you divide it by 2. It increased further to 42, you divide it by 3. It increased to 56, you divide it by 4. And by the time it was 60, you divided it by 5, and on and on. That's how you have your average product. And for the marginal, like somebody said, if I can remember what Ashia Mary said vividly when she was trying to describe the law of variable proportion and the law of diminishing return. Diminishing return only crop up when we have a fixed factor. And this instance, we have a fixed factor that is land. And because we have a fixed factor that is land, you are adding labor and labor, increasing the number of labor. The extent to which you have output responding to that increases in the number of variable proportion is in such a way that you will have a certain stage where rather than increasing output, it decreases output. So which is why for this example now, we have instances where we have the highest output at labor 5. And immediately after labor 5, we have decreasing. So we have 55 here. That shows the law of diminishing return. And the law of diminishing return also come up because of the addition to labor. So marginal product may not crop up if there is no need to add extra input. It is the output response to the addition of input. That is when the marginal product. So for this the last column here, where we have marginal product, you will see that you may not have anything marginal if we are not adding to the variable input. So for this marginal one, how do you calculate it? It is simply changing the total output divided by change in the quantity of input. So you can't have change in quantity of input for land because land remains the same. You only have change in quantity of input.
Sorry, what are we doing now? Are we going to log out back?
Nah, log out. You should call it a day already.
Good morning, class.
Oh, I don't try.
Oh, if you call it a day already, Jerry.
She's supposed to be Bobby.
Evergreen, Alpha, lead us in praise and worship.
Temporary use.
Meetings up. Give us praise and worship. They play. No go read in a book. Go read.
It goes on. This one. It goes on good like this. Just dash anybody. Post. Post.
Yes, nothing happen.
Alpha host.
When they disturb host.
So what are we doing like this now?
Post me in class now.
Invite her back. Make me try invite her back now.
Me in class.
I won't go sleep. Invite her. That's all for the day.
Yeah. Make una log out now. Then they fear.
You cannot log out.
Leave him now.
Class don't finish. Make una log out.
You log out first. Oh, this online class don't tire me. The stuff is campus. It's not easy, man.
Over 200 people still dey here.
Person come buy me corn.
I beg, who gets slide or materials for this class?
Let's see, she go send down to
No
class
matter
rep.
damn.
Even the last class, if that demand and supply, who gets?
I'll ask your class rep now.
He talk say no get to.
Your class rep no fit ask governor me they send down.
Shey you get?
Me I no get to my class rep say no send down.
I hear say she know this slide abi because the last slide wey dem send na specialization. They never send any other thing since that time.
Well, feel like say she dey send the recorded class after the this thing. Like all
Who
those
get the
ones.
time to do that one? When they send slides abeg.
Me I no see anything for you. Give me a log, give me a log, give me a log.
Báwo ni inú ó ti gbẹ? Wàhálà nìyẹn. Àwọn ìpínlẹ̀ náà ń ṣẹlẹ̀. Tí wọ́n á fẹ́ lẹ́yìn oṣù kẹ́kọ̀ọ́ lórí.
So you look like you at all. My God.
Upon say class don't they finish, some post the same matric number. Now they try.
They won't mark attendance now, why?
And now always go man, I always then go man come for. So we in
Oh,
this.
I mean attendance where they don't mark since we started to like. Let's wait. One this thing just be scam, I beg.
When scam, they know the user now only your name, then they look at.
Just say some people never attend online class is they resume.
No be your name on your matric number they need to mark your attendance.
So they told you, my class rep told you down with say you see just the write your name for our place, you know days. Yeah, I'm gonna no, I know days, you just the waste your time.
Now your matric number for days.
Even the
No.
matric number, they don't really check them again. Join class, join class. Concern.
Nothing concern them.
Maybe
Free
now in
them,
a
sha.
physical class or something.
When they say to sound now they ain't gonna say now because
Now they're gonna see it towards attend class.
it's a join class. Wait. Correct. Yeah, that one also was good for sorry. I still know don't finish.
Person talk say, I hope you know this Zoom is recording. And she has access to the recording later. What you say? She will talk button.
I don't know.
We talk truth now.
And
The pressure increase or decrease?
Wetin be increase or decrease by?
You know now. Bobo. But I don't think there's classic here, you know.
Our network was bad now. Well.
Yeah, no.
Even Nigeria safe no try. She wanna get light.
They left on the side.
I get light for your side. Ah, which side you stay?
I think road.
That side fit get light, but on that Unilag side down, never smell light since yesterday.
No, make I wait small if the class goes still.
So let's continue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't want to continue.
Lord.
Yeah.
You people don't
Why
want
do
to
you like it?
continue.
What?
Ma, we would love to continue, but
You are still gisting.
No, Mama, you can't
ma, we're
continue.
just talking about like the class.
Okay.
Ma, so people have
All
left
right.
already.
I know they will join back, and if they don't join, they're on their own.
That one no one come on. No be like say I come on. Make space no come dey again. Now one no come on since.
Ma, please, can we get the slides?
I will see what I can do.
Okay, ma.
All right, ma, thank you.
All right.
Tell me they join Paco.
So I want to know if you can see my
Can you hear
screen.
me?
I want to start sharing now.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I want to start sharing my screen now.
Okay, ma. Yeah, it's showing, ma.
You can see my screen.
Yes, ma.
All right. So far, I would just want us to know that in the outline, the only thing that we have is only economies of scale and diseconomies of scale, which I already have in the material that I'm using, that I'm sharing with you. So we are presently on the law of diminishing marginal return. So we will round up with these economies and diseconomies of scale. And I believe with that, we will be done with our class for today. So for the law of diminishing return, I've already gave example through a table, and the table explains that the law of variable proportion or the law of diminishing return, that for it, we can depict it further in a graph. So part of the reason why I will want us to share my screen is to identify how the behavior of those three concepts will be in a graph. So for the total product, we have, for the y-axis, we have output on the y-axis. So on the y-axis, it can be total output, average output, and marginal output. Or like what you are used to, it can be total product, marginal product, and average product on this y-axis. And on the x-axis, we have the inputs. We have the inputs. So that is the Q, quantity of inputs, and you have the response of the outputs. So the behavior of the total product is that it increases, reach the maximum or the peak, and then start falling. For the average product too, it does the same. The marginal product too does the same. Now, I want us to quickly put down a question. You know, from the onset of this class, I believe some of you are already logging back in for us to round up with these key things that I'm mentioning now, with these important things that I'm mentioning now. I want us to, if your friends have logged out, please let them know that they need to log in so that we'll round up in the next 20 to 30 minutes. So, like I said, I told you that for the theory of production, there is a familiar concept you people are used to when we say categories or classification of production, where we have primary, secondary, and tertiary. But at that point, I told you that there is still another way we usually describe it. And that way we call it, sorry, let me confirm that we are recording this so that whoever misses it will get the recording. All right, so recording is on. Now there is another way of describing it. For these three concepts, their behavior can be explained in 3 stages. That is why we call it stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So for a typical production process, we have a situation where when you are increasing the number of inputs at a certain stage, the total output, the average output, and the marginal output can be increasing, responding to the variable factor that is being added or variable factor that is changing. So at the first stage, now the question is, what happens at the 3 stages of production, or what happens at the 3 stages in the production process? Now, in these 3 stages, we will identify the relationship between total product, average product, and marginal product. We will identify the relationships among the 3 concepts, relationship among the total product, average product, and marginal product. Now, if you are noting down, I will want you to bear in mind that for a typical production process, anytime you are changing your inputs, you are adding more people that are producing, there is tendency that the total output will be increasing. That is at the first stage. So at that first stage, you will see total product increasing, marginal product increasing, average product increasing. They will all be rising at the first stage. But the marginal product has this tendency to rise faster than the average product. The marginal product, sorry, Abimbola.
Ma, please, can you come again?
Come
You
again
said
to
in
where?
a typical production process, there's a tendency that what?
Tendency that the marginal, sorry, I need to get that sentence clear now. But you have this recording. I may not say it exactly the way I said it, but let me just try to explain it again.
Okay.
That at the first stage of the production process, there is tendency for the output to increase. There is tendency for output to increase. with total products increasing, marginal and average product also increasing. But the right word I put in here is rising, that they are all rising at the initial stage. I believe that answered your question.
Yes, ma. Thank you, ma.
Yeah. Now, they are all rising, but the marginal product is rising faster than average product. So if you look at this graph here, you will see, I believe you can see my screen. If you will see that this graph may not be totally accurate, but it shows the behavior that the total product can rise, but we see situation where the marginal product rise faster than the average product, and they are all increasing, but the marginal product it rises faster. Now at the first stage, marginal product rises faster than average product. Marginal product reached maximum first. It reached maximum first. And then still in that same first stage, marginal product starts falling. So in this first stage, marginal product rise faster than average product. It rises faster, although it's not rising faster than total product, because total product will definitely be the highest. But marginal rise faster than average, then reached maximum, and before the end of that first stage of production process, it has already started falling. Then, so the major things you will note in the first stage, the major things to note in the first stage is that marginal product, the three concepts are rising, but marginal rise faster than average, and it reached maximum and then start falling. Now, the second stage, in the second stage, marginal product is already falling. Average product reached maximum in the second stage, and once something reaches maximum, what the next thing you expect such thing to do is to what? To start falling. So in the second stage, marginal product is already falling. Average product reached maximum and starts falling. Now it's still in that second stage. Total product is still increasing. I hope you understand that total product is still increasing in the second stage. Now, the first stage, marginal product reached maximum. Second stage, average product reached maximum. Now, that is just to tell you that at the third stage, that is when we expect, I will want one or two of you to respond to that. We expect which one to now reach maximum now at the third stage. So let me pick, can someone respond to that?
Total product.
Total product. All right, who was that? Tamilore, or is it Praise? Who responded to that?
Me, fulfillment.
I can't hear your name.
Fulfillment.
Okay, thank you. All right, so total product will reach maximum at third stage, but there are some other things that we want us to take note of in that third stage. Total product reach maximum in third stage. Average product has already started falling from second stage, you know. Then at that third stage, average product too is still falling. But that third stage, marginal product has already, you know, it has started falling from stage 1. So by the end of stage 2, marginal product would have reached 0, because whatever has been falling will definitely reach 0 and then have tendency to go towards negative after 0. So by the third stage, marginal product has turned negative. So what are the relationship among these three concepts? total product, marginal product, and average product. In a production process, you identify it by stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So for the last part, these economies of scale, let's ask specific question before I move on to the last part. Akim. Yeah.
Said that
that sound is breaking.
Said that in a situation whereby a company job more than 30 years and in a shop.
I can't hear you. That sound is breaking. Please adjust the sound and speak up so that I can hear you.
Well, he said that company more than like 30, it can still be operating when the fees.
The other fixed factors.
Can the others hear him?
Can
the others hear him? Maybe somebody should please help me to. So somebody should please help me to repeat his questions because I can't hear him. If you can hear him, help him to repeat the question. All right, so let's continue while you try to put your question in the chat since you can't say it clearly. Okay. Are you talking? All right, let's continue. Let's quickly look at the last part, economies of scale. By economies of scale, we refer to direct or indirect activities firms get into to increase output while minimizing the total cost of production. So economies of scale is simply trying to explain what firms can do. Economies of scale in terms of why can they expand? Can they reduce production? Deliberate action that firms get into to increase their output while trying to minimize their cost. It is the increase in efficiency of production as the number of goods being produced increases. It centers on increasing the size of the firm and enlarging the firm's capacity. When intentional move is made by the firm itself, it results to internal economies of scale. And I believe we have heard that before. When you say internal economies of scale, it was activities that a particular firm gets involved in that help him to enlarge or to expand, to increase efficiency. And when you now say external economies of scale, that is pointing to another activities by other firms that is not you directly, that could make you to benefit from or to increase whatever it is that you are doing. All right, so now this encompasses different dimensions through which firms manipulate any of the factors of production to increase output while minimizing or while maintaining lower cost. So the manipulation could be technological expansion, improvement in worker skills and well-being, putting byproducts to other uses, buying resources in bulks or advertising. A lot of things, activities can be done by a firm. So by economies of scale, you are trying to see what you do to make improvements, to improve efficiency, to expand, to enlarge production and all that. Those are things that you see under economies of scale. However, if the benefit is derived from actions of other firms, that is external economies of scale. Now, I will round up with, on the other hand, economies of scale is diseconomies of scale. When some of these things, rather than bringing efficiency, rather than bringing improvement or enlargement, it brings inefficiency and it makes cost to be rising rather than increasing. It increases cost, it increases discomfort and all that. So we have these economies of scale. So the major things that I will want us to notice, these two concepts, economies of scale and diseconomies of scale, is just for us to know what it means. We may not really bother so much about it. So with that, I want to call it end the class here, but I will want us to ask questions, because according to the outline, there could have been some areas that we have left out in the outline. And I need to let you know this before I answer some of your questions. Theory of firm, and theory of production is quite large, but we have been able to compact this course outline to the basic things. That doesn't mean that it is limited here. So there could be some questions that I will even ask us to read the theory of cost, because it's usually run together with the theory of firm, theory of production. So theory of cost is still part of it, though not specifically indicated here in this outline, but it is still something that we still make comparison with. So Abdul Malik, ask your question.
Okay,
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm listening.
So, ma'am, please, I want you to help me explain the economics of scale again. I did not really get the explanation.
All right. It simply points to what and the activities firms do, or expansion, or whatever it is, activities that firms do, they get involved in to increase or to enlarge their capacity of production, or to maybe improve their efficiency. So it has a lot of examples. There are some activities that could have to do with maybe buying in bulks, improving the skills of workers, and every other activities that firms do in order to increase or enlarge their production capacity. So it is economies of scale if it is beneficial. It is diseconomies of scale if it is otherwise. So most times these activities should majorly be something that will be beneficial, and something that would indirectly reduce the cost. But oftentimes it could lead to something that is even increasing the cost. And rather than increasing output, you have situation where the output is not even improving. So it could be that. So that is this economics of scale. Akim.
My question is that you said that, now you are listening.
I said ask your question.
Okay, Ma, you said that if a company like is operating like for like 35 years, it can still be operating in a short one. If
Yes.
its input is fixed, like building and
one or
factory,
two of the input is still fixed. Yeah.
fixed. But if the fixed input, like the building, like the person expand the size or innovate it and all those things, can the person shift to the long run?
The long run is simply when you are flexible, when you have all factors, in as much as you have one or two that is not very, you could improve it, fine. You could design it, paint the building, but once the space is not expanding, once the space remains the same, and as far as the nature of the capital input by factory or whatever production space and all that, by virtue of the nature of that factor input, if it does not improve in size or expand or whatever, then that is still short run. In as much as you are able to expand, you increase the spaces and all that, that makes it long run. So it's not, oftentimes it's not even by time horizon or how many years involved. short run and long run, you simply differentiate it by what and what you are able to alter, the production mix that you are able to alter. Apology. Apology, oh, are you here? You raised up your hand now. All right, can we call it a day? Is Apology still raising up his hand? All right, thank you. So if we are, once I'm able to compile this, I will send it to the class rep and it will get across to you. So thank you for your time. And so sorry for this interruption through network every now and then. Network issue everywhere. All right, thank you. So I would like to end the class now. Abolaji still raised up his hand, and I believe it's by mistake.
Who has done his or her GSC test here?
Are you management science or environmental science?
Management.
Make una log out. Class on.